Combat Society. Just this past weekend, there were a lot of cards that we're going to discuss. UFC on Fox, Milwaukee. Raging Al versus Kevin Lee. What a card. What a fight that one was. Bellator 212 and 213, both in Hawaii the day after each other. So it was pretty awesome. And they had their champion defend her belt, which was pretty cool to see, and credit to her. Well, we're going to discuss that main event on UFC Milwaukee. Iaquinta versus Kevin Lee 2. Obviously, that was the rematch, and Iaquinta took the first one. But Iaquinta got another important win for his career and rallied late and beat Kevin Lee.
Yeah, Iaquinta had a perfect performance. As you said, rallied late, rounds 4 and 5. I think getting 2 10-8s allowed him to win. Kevin Lee winning the previous 3 rounds. Pretty close, but Iaquinta putting on a striking display. His grappling was picture perfect, defending the submission threats from Kevin Lee, rear naked choke defense, getting back to his feet, landing the better strikes, and almost finishing him in round 4 and round 5, allowed him to get the 10-8s, and that's what allowed him to get the points on the judges' scorecards to win the fight. And that's squarely put Iaquinta in that lightweight title challenges box, and there's some great fights for him now if he wants to get more active, because he hasn't been as active. If he wants to get more active, there's some guys in there that need fights, and we're talking Tony Ferguson, we're talking Dustin Poirier, we're talking Justin Gaethje, Nate Diaz. These guys need fights, and if Iaquinta wants to get in the mix of it and really contend for a title, because he is saying he wants to fight Khabib, but you're not going to fight him next, even though you did have a great performance against him earlier in the year. Not yet. You got to fight some of these guys and make a real case for yourself. Kevin Lee, on the other hand, is going down the rankings, and all we're left with is a sour taste in our mouths of him just talking trash and not really backing it up. He did beat Edson Barbosa, but has been inconsistent, especially losing to Iaquinta, who's not really high up the rankings. We don't know what's going to happen with him, so only time will tell for him if he's going to move up or stay at 155. There's a lot happening with him.
Yeah, Kevin Lee talked a lot of trash. He even said things like Dustin Poirier is not a serious contender in the lightweight division. He said it was a fun fight, just a fun fight.
Yeah.
So we can't really trust what Kevin Lee says now. He's just a bit of a talker, like Colby Covington.
Yeah, he's become a bit of a joker.
Yeah, so Kevin Lee needs to start racking up some serious wins before he can start talking again. But Iaquinta has a world ahead of him right now. He's making a lot of money selling real estate and in the UFC. He's living life to the fullest. So the lightweight division is crazy. But another person who has now projected themselves back in after a few mishaps, Edson Barbosa defeating Dan Hooker, the New Zealander. Yeah,
that was an amazing fight. We saw Dan Hooker come out early in the fight, round 1, looking to have a leg kicking battle with Edson Barbosa, and that didn't work out because that's where Edson wants to be. He wants to be in that kicking range, and Dan Hooker just played right into that. And if you're gonna trade kicks with Edson Barbosa, you're the one that's gonna be you're gonna get the short end of the stick, and that's what happened. The leg was getting damaged round 1 and round 2.
Started collapsing,
and that's right. And he had no movement because his front leg was damaged. And Edson Barbosa started landing the body kicks, and once the body kicks started landing, the accumulation with the leg kicks, it was easy for him to put him away late in the fight with a body kick. A body kick and then a body punch that dropped him and eventually finished him. But a great performance from Dan Hooker, really showing heart, really staying in there, even though he was extremely hurt. Edson Barbosa knows how to finish the fight, and still proving that Edson Barbosa is still a high level. He's high caliber in that lightweight division. That division's stacked, but Edson's still showing that he's still in the mix of it.
Yeah, Edson Barbosa put on a performance that was very strategic. If you look at it, analyze it really, really closely, he kicked those legs, kicked him, beat him in that, and then just ripped the body and just picked him apart. So it was brilliant, and those body kicks were pretty fierce.
It was systematic, I reckon. Yeah. The way he went after the legs, and he went after the body, and he was going for the highlight reel knockout as well. He was going up high with the turning kicks. He was trying to knock him out, but eventually he resorted to the body shots, and that's what got the job done.
Yep. If we make some honorable mentions for this card, another lightweight who has now broken the record for most submissions. He actually broke his own record. Is Charles Oliveira, who submitted Jim Miller, another black belt.
Yep.
So he's a real jiu-jitsu freak. And gets that rear naked choke.
Absolutely. Jim Miller's he's a veteran of the division. We know his ground game is world class, but has been submitted by some guys. Charles Oliveira getting the submission, the rear naked choke, and as you said, putting that record up even further. For Jim Miller, maybe he's done. You're getting submitted in the first round. You're quite old. You've had a lot of fights. Charles Oliveira, the sky's the limit for him. So, yeah, that's all I got on that. But we also got another mention there, Sergio Pettis versus Rob Font. I have a couple of words to say about that. I would say, so watching the fight, I thought Sergio Pettis didn't look too good. Rob Font looked really good. With his striking was very crisp, and Sergio looked like really hesitant, couldn't pull the trigger, and Rob Font got an easy decision. I would say that's two losses in a row. That's a move up. Or
yeah, he moved up because they're closing the flyweight division, so he's moved up. And Rob Font is a guy who is underrated in the bantamweight division, so he didn't come up against no slouch, but it's signs that the Pettis brothers, probably both of them, not just Sergio, that maybe they need some change in their life. They really do need maybe a change in camp, and they're so dedicated to their Duke Rufus, but they might need to turn somewhere else, because Sergio Pettis, he's so young and so full of talent that he shouldn't be wasting his career. I feel like he shouldn't waste his time here. He showed, like, back last year he won a lot of fights. He was on a 4-fight win streak, and now he's on a 2-fight losing streak. Yeah,
I think with Sergio and Anthony, really, that camp, that Duke Rufus environment, these guys, a lot of these gyms were really popular and really cutting edge 8 years ago, 5 years ago, but the times are changing where the caliber of fighters and the caliber of coaching is raised to the next level. And personally, I don't think Duke Rufus is there now. For Sergio and Anthony, maybe they need to move to a different camp, because we know they're tremendously talented, both of them. Sergio's obviously got a crazy amount of potential. Anthony Pettis has already been a champion, and he's still in his prime as well. If he can, maybe that's what they need, a change of scenery, a change of coaches, just change it up, and maybe they can find some success, but we're going to have to see.
Yep. So also on the weekend, we saw Bellator, and they were putting on some awesome fights, 2 in a row, day after each other, in Hawaii. So you don't really see that often from a promotion where they'll do two fights, one after the other, and they're both in Hawaii. They beat the UFC to get to Hawaii, and that's pretty remarkable, because we have a Hawaiian champ in the UFC, Max Holloway, and he's been campaigning to get a card in Hawaii, but maybe the train's gone here.
I would say the UFC are going to bring something out, but let's talk about which
Bellator
one.
212.
212 first? Okay.
And that was Brent Primus versus Michael Chandler. Obviously, Brent Primus beat Michael Chandler in their first encounter. But it was a win, not really a win, because Michael Chandler actually injured himself and he could no longer fight. So he lost the title. But Michael Chandler, since that injury, has come back and won all the fights, and now he beat Brent Primus, just absolutely annihilated him, stopped everything he could do, and Michael Chandler really is one of the best who's not in the UFC.
I would say so. A great win, and keep fighting and keep winning, and we'll see what happens. Maybe there's a UFC contract on the horizon. Who knows?
Hopefully one day we get to see Michael Chandler, because he's beat some really, really tough opponents, and the sky's the limit for him. One day he will get signed, I believe, though.
Imagine that, throwing Michael Chandler into that lightweight mix.
He will be up there.
That's an absolute crazy scenario.
He's so all-rounded that he might be the puzzle to solve Khabib one day.
I wonder.
He's very all-rounded. But the co-main event on that Bellator 212 card, it's unfortunate to say, but Frank Mir, I think his time's done. I feel like his time's done. He lost to Javi Ayala, and he basically submitted to punches, and I feel like Frank Mir's time is up.
Yeah, so Frank Mir,
and when we're talking about a guy who he lost to is not a very good guy. He's like a 10-6, 11-6 now. So
if you're losing in round 2 to punches, submitting to punches. When when in the UFC, you were known as the big heavyweight with the crazy submission skills, and you're getting submitted by punches. It's a bit sad. He is old. He's had a great career. He doesn't need to fight. He's got a great future in commentary and analyst for Bellator, anywhere really. He's very fun to watch in his commentary roles. Very enjoyable. He doesn't need to fight. So I hope he doesn't fight again.
Yeah. We're also going to give a shout out to, on the prelim card, Chris Avila trains with Nate Diaz, got a win by submission. So shout out to the Cesar Gracie boys there.
That's that Cesar Gracie jiu-jitsu game right there.
Chris
High
Avila.
level stuff. Rear naked choke. That was good.
Yeah, and he was the first on the preliminary card there. Now we're going to get into the next day, which was Bellator 213. And this showed a lot of good fights. There was a lot of interesting matchups. The first one being Naaman Gracie versus Ed Ruth. So we didn't know what to expect here because Naaman Gracie being a Gracie, he has ridiculous jiu-jitsu, trains at Renzo Gracie's, all of the best high-level no-gi grapplers in the world, coming up against Ed Ruth, who is a 3-time national champion. So 3-time NCAA champion in wrestling. It usually doesn't work out well for the jiu-jitsu guy, but in this contest, he just absolutely obliterated him on the ground and finished him. Finished Ed Ruth.
Yeah, that was an amazing fight. Also, really technical fight. We saw Ed Ruth trying to get those takedowns, but then Naaman Gracie very active off his back, really fighting for those submissions, really active off his back, and
you don't see that often from jiu-jitsu guys. They're kind of, they're not really in that realm. The wrestlers are kind of ground and pounding them. They're working, and the jiu-jitsu guys are usually flustered. They don't really know what to do. But Naaman Gracie's that next level.
Well, when you're talking about those Renzo Gracie guys,
it's
a different story. They're very active. They're not going to just sit. They're not going to let you just sit there on top of them in side control or half guard. They're always looking for submissions. They're always looking to get out, and that's what we saw. And we saw. That's what we saw. We saw Ed Ruth couldn't land any damage, and Naaman Gracie's movement very good, and then eventually he got the submission, which is what we sort of expect. Even though we sometimes don't see that against the wrestler, sometimes the wrestler will control the fight. But when you're talking, as I said, when you're talking to some of the caliber of Naaman Gracie, it's a different story.
Yeah, Naaman Gracie now moves into, that was obviously the welterweight Grand Prix. I like how they do the Grand Prix over there, those tournaments.
They should bring that to the UFC.
I feel like that's a really good idea, and he moves one step closer to that welterweight belt, really. And Roy McDonald holds that belt, so can he make a do?
Is he on that level yet? Maybe not, but keep fighting, keep getting wins, keep getting experience, and you might be there one day.
Yeah. The next fight was at catchweight. Lyoto Machida versus Rafael Carvalho. Lyoto Machida just debuted at Bellator on such a good card in Hawaii. He obviously was on a 2-fight win streak, now on a 3-fight win streak. Yep. So maybe Lyoto's making a comeback in his career here. And that was he versed former champion Rafael Carvalho, and he's beat him, which it was a split decision, very close.
Very close fight.
Very, very close fight, but he's on track to actually get a title shot, I believe.
I think so too. Even though it was a close fight, some people said Rafael won, some people said Lyoto won. I'm not mad with the split decision for Lyoto, but it was a pretty even fight in terms of the grappling, in terms of the striking, pretty even stuff.
It was Lyoto at the end of that fight that really hustled and allowed him to get that win, I believe.
And that's the most important thing when you have a close fight, rallying right at the end, really showing the judges that I've won this fight, because the last thing they see is you in a dominant position or controlling. It's always good for the judges. So, can he go for a title shot? It's possible. Can he become a champion in two different organizations? Possibly, yes.
It should be pretty awesome to see Lyoto Machida. It's always good to see Lyoto. He's just such a veteran, such a all round, like such a beautiful fighter to watch.
Yeah, his style's amazing. He's the Karate Kid, and everybody loves to watch him fight.
Yeah. Now, the star of the show, the star of Hawaii, Alima Leigh McFarlane, is the champ, and she defended her title in front of her fans against Valerie Letourneau, who has fought in the UFC, and she submitted her opponent by a triangle choke. She submitted nearly every one of her opponents, and she proves again that her jiu-jitsu, her game, is not nobody can beat it in the Bellator.
Yeah, I think, well, while watching that fight, I thought the fight was a bit sloppy. It was a bit sloppy, but then she got the submission in round 3, and that saved her.
When it gets to the ground, she really dominates.
That's right. But up until that point, I was thinking this is a bit sloppy. The level of competition didn't look like it was that high compared to what you'd see in the UFC. But did get the submission and got the defense in hometown in Hawaii. So there's not much else I can say on that.
And the crowd erupted when she won. It was pretty. It's nothing like defending your belt in your home country, and in Honolulu, Hawaii, it's a great place. So Alima Lee McFarlane can be a real star, and I feel like maybe one day she should go into the UFC
For sure.
Now we've got to talk about some pretty interesting topics. Cain Velasquez, he's back. According to everybody, Cain Velasquez is back. One of the greatest heavyweights of all time to basically beat everybody. And he's supposedly recovered from all of his injuries, and he's healthy. How do you feel? What do you think about that?
Well, if that is true, that's huge news. If he can come, they're saying the potential matchup is him versus Francis next year.
Francis Ngannou
next year.
UFC Phoenix.
That is crazy. If that fight gets made, that's a huge heavyweight clash. But I favor Cain heavily there because I know Cain's takedowns, his wrestling is on a new level. Training with those AKA guys, Daniel Cormier, the rest of the team. If he is healthy, that's the game plan to beat Francis. But Francis does have that knockout power, and he has a win recently, so that's a great fight. If Cain can really reclaim his former glory, once Daniel Cormier leaves the division after he fights Brock, after he fights John Jones, and Daniel leaves the division, if Cain's still healthy, he's 36. Heavyweights can be in their prime up until 40 or even further, even older. If he can do that and come back to the heavyweight division, fight them all again, fight Stipe, fight Alistair, fight all these guys, get a couple of wins, and then fight for that vacant title.
I'm just the only thing I'm scared is that he's not the same Cain, and he could really hurt himself. I feel like he will not be the same. A back injury, the injuries he had are they're not just little injuries. They're big back injuries, and that can really stunt a fighter. You can recover from knees, you can recover from this stuff nowadays, but the back surgeries, the back treatments, they're not at that level. It's very invasive.
But there is new stuff coming out every year. Stem cells. We know.
But is he doing that?
We don't know if he's doing that, but you think he would be if he's got money and he's Mexican, so and that's where people do the stem cells. That's where you get the best stem cell kind of treatment in Mexico. So if he hasn't been doing it, he probably should be. But I only say what I say in terms of Cain reclaiming his former glory if he can maintain that healthiness. If he really is how he says he is, fully recovered, healthy, then I have high hopes. But if he's not, it's going to be the same sort of story.
Do you think that if he is healthy, he completely runs through Francis though?
Yes.
You really believe
I really
that?
think so. Does Francis have it? Just because we know these AKA guys, they stick to the game plan. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They stick to the game plan, and they don't deviate from the game plan. And we know the game plan for Francis will be take him down. And Cain will easily take him down. There's no way Francis can stop that unless he gets caught with a lucky punch coming in. Think about it. Can Francis stop that takedown?
I don't think he can.
No, he can't.
I don't think he can. It's just I'm scared that he's just not him. He's not that. He's 70% of what Cain is.
Well, we don't know yet. That's the thing.
But
we're going to see.
70% of Cain enough to beat Francis.
I think it is because when you're talking about Cain Velasquez, you're talking about one of the most skilled heavyweights we've ever seen. So
I hope they put the fight together. If it is, Ariel Helwani tweeted out saying that it would be at UFC Phoenix in February. So that's not too far.
That's not too far. It's 2 months. I can't wait.
Yeah. Now, also another person who said they've recovered, GSP. Will he fight? Will he not? He had that colitis, I believe it was, the stomach problems.
Yeah.
So, if I'm honest, I think GSP can walk away from the sport and he will be considered a GOAT. He'll just be one of the GOATs. He'll be one of the top 3 fighters of all time. I don't think he needs to fight anyone else, but his nature is to just beat those people that can't be beaten. Do the unthinkable. So I feel like he will come back once again and probably fight GSP. Probably fight Khabib, sorry.
I do have a criticism on GSP in terms of the way he's come back is he wants legacy fights. He wants cheap, easy legacy, like easy fights that are going to do a lot for his legacy, like Michael Bisping. Out of all the guys he could have fought in middleweight, obviously Michael Bisping was his easiest matchup out of all of them. So it feels cheap to me the way he went about that in terms of going up a weight class and fighting the easiest guy, even though he was the champ. I think he wants that in the future with other fights in 165 and other fights in 155. He might not go down to 155, but if they do bring the 165 division in, he's going to be a front runner to be fighting for that belt, possibly against Conor or whoever else is going to go up in that division. If they bring it out, because nothing's been confirmed yet. But if that is the case, we can definitely see him there.
Yeah, well, Dana White doesn't really want him to fight at 155. So 165, if they create that, why can't he just fight at 170?
He can fight at 170 because I think, honestly, he doesn't want those fights. Imagine fighting he doesn't want to fight Tyron Woodley. That's a hard match. That's a hard fight for him.
That's a fight that a lot of people would favor, and maybe I even favor him there because.
But does he favor himself there?
That's the problem. He usually favors himself. So
I think Tyron Woodley is a better version of him at this age right now. When you're talking about, you're not going to take him down, and
you might. I feel like you can take him down. Jake Shields has taken him down.
He's pretty strong.
People have taken him down, but I feel like he can.
That was a long time ago, though.
I feel like Tyron Woodley can be taken down. He can
by somebody like GSP at his age.
Yep, I really do believe that. I believe GSP has an all-rounded game. He mixes it up so well with the striking that you don't really see it. He just takes you down. It just happens like that.
But when you think about it, you got to admit that Tyron Woodley is one of his harder matchups.
Of course.
Compared to
of course.
He wants. I think he's not. I don't think he's looking for those hard matchups like that, because in the last 6 months he's been talking a lot of smack about fighting Conor or fighting Khabib. These are guys that are way smaller than him, less strong, and Tyron Woodley's. We haven't heard a peep out of him about fighting Tyron Woodley. That's his division. GSP is a welterweight, or was a welterweight. He hasn't expressed any concern about going back to welterweight and fighting for the belt, reclaiming it. I think it's clear he doesn't want those hard matchups. He wants cheap and easy fights that will do a lot for his legacy, like beating Conor or beating Khabib. These are guys that he's heavily favored against. He doesn't want any underdog type matchups.
I agree with that. Now we're going to speak about the featherweight matchups that are happening. So what just got announced, I'm not sure if it's completely announced, but it's Zabit versus Jeremy Stephens and Aldo versus Moicano. Two insane matchups that are going to make the featherweight division great again, I believe. So Aldo versus Moicano, we're talking about Moicano has beaten basically everybody in that division, but he lost to Brian Ortega, so he was the alternate for that title fight between Max Holloway and Brian Ortega. And Aldo, who is looking like he's trying to revamp his career.
But can he? Who was the Aldo? Who was the Aldo?
Aldo versus Moicano.
Moicano and Zabit versus
Jeremy Stephens.
That's an interesting matchup. I want to talk about that one. That is Zabit versus Jeremy Stephens.
Yeah,
that's a huge fight. That could be fireworks. That one. If that does happen, talking about a technical striker with grappling against the hardest hitting 145 pounder.
Yeah,
the real hardest hitting 145 pounder. And that could be real fireworks. We don't know what's going to happen there. When you're talking about
both
very offensive guys,
Two guys that also get hit though.
They do get hit. But Jeremy Stephens, we haven't seen the real knockout power from Zabit, but we've seen it from Jeremy Stephens. We know he can seriously knock you out, and this is a great test for Zabit. Like we was talking about last week, this is a great test for him if he can get through a guy like Stephens. He's going to shoot himself right up those rankings, and he'll be title shot.
And you have to remember that he's technically a draw because these Russians, they have so many fans. I believe Zabit already has 1 million followers, more than 1 million.
Oh wow!
He's very loved in Russia. Russia comes out and supports their guys till the end. That he will, if he beats Stevens, really put himself in title. Like, I believe Max would want to fight Zabit after that. I really believe
It's a tough fight for. It's tough. Well, that's the thing. It depends. Depending on the top performance. This is obviously a match that's not confirmed, but
believe it's in the works for.
If it is in the works,
235 UFC 235.
If he can put on a good performance against Stevens, because we know Stevens is sort of in the division, sort of a journeyman. He's sort of just there, but this is a really good test for Zabit. This will really throw him right in there. Yeah. And if he can put a great performance,
and everyone wants to hype him up.
I'll be sold on Zabit if he can. Yeah. I'll be really sold on him.
Because there's a lot of people that are in the community that feel Zabit is really overrated, and because everyone's like Zabit, this, that, the other, and now he has a chance, I believe, with this matchup to prove everybody that the hype is real.
Exactly.
So now we're going to get into comments. There's a lot of good comments online. We've been scrolling through Reddit. And we're going to discuss those. If you guys have comments, I'd like to see your comments in the comment section, and we'll get into those now. So this one was actually on Facebook. Since seeing the Oliveira fight and many other fights where fighters lose a lot of blood, I think it's time to maybe consider excessive blood loss a way of ending the fight, and the referee should be trained to know when to stop it. I think fighters never quit spirit takes a lot of years out of their career, and I think if this idea and other ideas prevent major injuries, they need to be considered. Thoughts?
In terms of blood loss, it's very rare to get a situation where somebody's completely cut open and they're losing large amounts of blood. When you're talking about the everyday, every fight cut, there's no reason to stop a fight for a cut unless the blood just won't stop and the Vaseline is not working at all.
And the damage is real. Real damage is happening.
That's right. But a lot of fighters, you're talking about scar tissue that builds up on top of their eyebrows, under their eyes, and all you got to do is punch it once and it opens up. And the number one example of that is Nick Diaz. These guys have scar tissue all over their face. You punch them once in the face and they're bleeding. And there's no reason to stop a fight for that, because you're just ruining that fighter's whole potential. You're just stopping a fight for no reason. I think it needs to be looked at, and fair, to be fair, they do stop fights when the cuts are bad. So you don't need to put anything else onto that. Yeah. What we have now is fine. So
I think
that's what I think.
I think the current situation is pretty good. Now this one's referring to Dan Hooker versus Edson Barbosa, the kicks that we were talking about. I'm honestly blown away that kick didn't break a rib. If you would have told me it obliterated his lower ribs, I would have just believed you. Hooker is a beep savage, but I'm very happy to see my boy Barbosa back.
Yeah, Hooker has heart, man, and Barbosa has devastating kicks, and Barbosa's in the mix. Barbosa is in the mix, and Dan Hooker really showed he has heart, and that's a testament to his resolve as well. So
those kicks were scary though. He basically was getting hit with these kicks right in the gut, boom, and he would go down, but then he'd come back up, then he'd go down again, he'd come back up, and it was insane to see. Dan Hooker, I honestly think, can contend in that division. He's training with Israel Adesanya, and he's training with Kai Kara France, all those guys at City Kickboxing in Auckland. I feel like those guys have next level striking. I feel like maybe he came out with the wrong strategy that day.
Yeah, I think so.
But I feel like he really is a good fighter. The next one. The next one is, as much as I, in brackets, somewhat dislike Askren, his confidence seems genuine. Boring as his style may be, it's interesting to have a guy with these skills in the UFC. I believe Ben Askren presents a style that is very unique, but it is also still similar kind of to Khabib's. If we're talking about most similar style, it's similar to Khabib's, but it's awesome to see a guy like him, and he's really confident and he really trusts in his ability and wants to fight everybody, and that's what I really like about him.
I love watching Ben Askren interviews and videos, because he talks really well, and he's very well spoken, very friendly. He tells you he's going to beat you. He's very polite, but it's just a supreme sort of confidence, as this guy's saying. It's a supreme confidence that he just he doesn't have one iota of thought that he could ever lose, and he trusts his wrestling 100% to the death, and I don't think he's ever even thought that his wrestling could get exposed. He's in the mindset of there's no way my wrestling can lose, and that's that supreme confidence that you see, and it's fun to watch. It's contagious. I love it.
Yeah, it's really good. Askren is going to be, if he beats, I believe, so UFC 233 was cancelled, and he was on that card, so everybody got moved, and I think they're trying to book him for some other card. I'm not sure what card they're trying to book him for.
They're trying to book him for I believe he wants to fight Usman.
Yeah.
He wants to fight Usman or Colby for the interim title on the first ESPN card.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Because they said, I think they put it to Robbie Lawler to say, let's fight on the next one. And Robbie's like, no, I need an extra week, which is weird because he couldn't take a fight 7 days before when you were already a month and a half out. It's like, that was a bit weird. So in terms of what's happening with Ben Askren and his fight status, we just don't know what's going on there yet. So
yeah,
we'll see.
Okay, the next one is, it's crazy how quick people are to call fighters GOATs nowadays. GOATs, if you don't know, is greatest of all time. Guys like GSP, Aldo, Fedor, Anderson, DJ, Jones, etc. They reached the top of their division and stayed there for years and years. Nowadays, pretty much every single champ is the supposed GOAT. And that resonates with me, really. It does. Because we're now calling these people GOATs. Like, honestly, Max Holloway, I don't consider him a GOAT yet. I don't think he should be in the picture yet. I feel like there's people that are just being called GOATs for no reason. And that's true. I feel like Jones killed everybody. Anderson killed everybody. Fedor, Aldo. These guys destroyed a whole division.
Yeah.
And to some degree, Conor McGregor destroyed a whole division. Just because he defended it once doesn't really mean anything. He destroyed a whole division. He did.
Yeah.
Just because he only defended it once. You have to put Conor up there.
And,
that's why.
And Max destroyed the division too. But I feel like if you're in your prime and you lose, you have to avenge your losses to be a GOAT, because you've lost to Conor, you've lost to Poirier. Yeah. You need to avenge those losses. Otherwise, how can you be the GOAT when some guy has a win over you and you haven't got it back? Impossible. That's why I don't consider DC the GOAT, because you have 2 losses against Jones.
Well, these are multiple GOATs.
That's right. How can you be a GOAT when you have 2 or 3 losses against multiple different people? They must all be better than you. How can you be the GOAT? That's how I see it. Now, you got some crazy ones like Demetrius Johnson. I've never thought that guy was the GOAT. The level of competition in that division wasn't there. He was very, very, very skilled, pound for pound, one of the best, but greatest of all time. The competition wasn't there. When you look at real GOATs like Fedor or John Jones, I love to talk about John, the level of competition, how many former champions he beat, how he beat them, he overcame adversity every single fight, putting on a better performance every fight than the next. So that's the kind of resume you want to look for. Guys who have crazy records. I feel like I don't see that from Demetrius. I don't see that. Max is getting. It's hard to say. People say Max is a GOAT now. It's as the comment said. Yeah, I think it's a bit silly. Yeah,
but I don't think we can say there's multiple. I don't know how. Well, is it one GOAT? It's greatest of all time? So it should be one GOAT, right? Just one.
I believe it's GOATs of different eras.
Okay.
That's how I see it.
Okay, so there's like 10 GOATs then.
Yeah. Every era has a GOAT.
A GOAT's got to be a category then. It can't be a...
You'd be the best of an era.
It can't... Yeah, I don't think it can be it has to be a category of fighters that are just better than everybody else.
Unless your performance, like if you look at basketball, you look at Michael Jordan, he's a GOAT, but his accomplishments transcend all generations because of what he did. Yeah. His accomplishments are just too much that you have to consider him in all generations. So that's the kind of situation we're looking at when we look at John Jones possibly in the future.
Yeah. The last comment, Nate might be the most overrated fighter on this board. The board is the Reddit board. People don't seem to realize how bad of a fighter he actually is. Wow. I don't think he's a bad fighter at all. I just feel like Nate Diaz has come up against really tough fighters, and that's why his record's like that. He beat Conor McGregor. You have to remember that. Is Conor McGregor overrated?
No, so absolutely not.
He choked out, tapped out Conor McGregor, and in amazing fashion, and lit him up with strikes. And even in the second fight was very competitive. Could have gone either way. So he beat guys. He's beat real guys. He's not.
Absolutely.
I don't think he's overrated.
Absolutely. You know what you get with Nate though. He's going for a finish. He wants to put on an exciting fight. He's standing up with you. Once it hits the mat, he's choking you out. But there is a formula to beat him, and it's not an appealing formula. A lot of guys do it. It's a systematic approach that's not very fun, and that's the criticism that Nate gives other people. He's like, we're doing a point scoring sort of thing. It's not a real, the way I win is when I beat your ass, but you beat me by scoring points and you didn't really hurt me. Yeah. And that's why he has a lot of losses on his record, because these guys don't really want to fight him. They want to score points, either take him down and hold him there and do no damage, or stand on the feet and pity patter and kick the legs and not really engage. When Nate doesn't play that game, he just wants to fight. And that's why he has losses on his record. When you go for the finish, you're not going to always come out with it. And if you're fighting for the finish and you don't get it, you're probably going to lose a decision. So that's how I feel on that.
Yeah, I agree. So those are the end of those comments. We want you to leave your comments down below, and we really want to discuss them because they're awesome.
Absolutely.
But next week we have a gap in fights. No fights. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
we're depressed now.
Yeah.
No fights.
Well, we'll talk about the news and stuff. There'll be some crazy news out there, because the next week after that we got UFC
234.
230. Yep. That
Jones versus Gustafsson 2.
Right.
What a fight. Cool.
Huge matchup. So
people have been saying they got the lingering feeling that Gus is going to win. They can feel it this time, but we don't know. We don't really know. But that's Combat Society. That's all we got time for today. And but you got to follow us on Twitter now at Combat AU. It's different to our Facebook and Instagram, which is at Combat AUS. So definitely hit those ones up, because we're more active on there, and we'll be posting little snippets here and there for you guys. So definitely check that out. Peace.